Are you planning to attend the Bridgerton experience? Or maybe you just want to dress Bridgerton for Halloween. Or maybe you've just watched Bridgerton for the 1000th time and now feel a burning desire to wear delicious Regency gowns every day of your life. Well, I'm here to tell you that the gown is not enough. What you really need to look your Bridgerton best is to wear the proper Regency undergarments. They're going to help keep you cool and comfortable because they're made from light, breathable cotton. They're going to give you the proper silhouette so that you will look like you just stepped from the pages of a Lady Whistledown pamphlet. So if you're looking for a way to add a touch of authenticity to your Bridgerton costumes, or if you're just looking to have some fun, I highly recommend wearing Regency undergarments. In my last video, we made a pair of transitional stays, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. In today's video, we are going to be making a chemise and a petticoat. So let's jump right in. I was originally planning on just reusing my 18th century chemise or shift, but I decided that I might want to make some Regency outfits that were sleeveless, and so I wanted to make a sleeveless shift to facilitate that. So I used a pattern, less pattern, more like guide from a blog that I found called 30th Birthday Bash, and I will link to those instructions below. But it's basically pretty simple. You just take some measurements to determine your size and then follow the instructions for how wide the shoulder should be and how wide the hem should be. And so I wanted to use this thrifted bed sheet, which was the same bed sheet that I used for my stays because I had it. It was a nice lightweight cotton and it would be easy. So I made my chemise a little bit longer than it should be because I wanted to have it, I wanted to be able to not put a seam at the shoulders, and I also wanted to use the edge of the sheet instead of having to put a hem in. So it ended up kind of being the perfect length on me where it goes almost to the floor and kind of will function like a second petticoat as well as a chemise. So after cutting out the trapezoid shape and pinning up the sides, all I did was stitch up both sides, and I just left a bit of a gap up at the top for my arms to stick out through. Using that same measurement chart that was provided on the blog, I created a template for the neck, and it is longer in the front and shorter in the back. And I really appreciated that there was actually a template like with measurements to make the neckline, because one of the things that I really struggled with when I made my 18th century shift was how big should the neckline be, what shape should it be, how is it gonna fall. Like, when I had tried that shift on before cutting the neckline, it was very close and tight fitting, and then after I cut that neckline in what I thought was the appropriate size, it actually ended up being a little bit bigger than I wanted to, and like the shoulders fell off. So I very much appreciated having this measurement based template to create where I just knew the size that it should be and could go off of that. At this point, I did still do a quick try on with the stays on top just to make sure that the neckline was going to work before sewing it. And I also checked the armholes to see how much more I wanted to sew them up. And you can't see it through that face of concentration, but at this point, I was pretty darn excited. To finish off the armholes, I kind of just had to make up my own method because in the time period and according to the tutorial, the shift would have had sleeves and you would have added a gusset in for the underarm. But because I was trying to make this sleeveless version, all I did was fold back the fabric like along basically the same amount that my seam allowance was from the side seam. So folded that back once, folded it back a second time to make sure I was enclosing that raw edge, and then just did a top stitch with my machine. Again, my theory for undergarments that aren't going to be seen is let's do it as quick and easy as possible so that we can get to the fun outer dress. The last step for the chemise is to finish the neckline. So all that you need to do is fold the neckline back twice, and this neckline is going to have a drawstring, which hopefully will help fix some of those fit issues that I had in my 18th century shift. But I did the same little shortcut here where I took my cord and actually pinned it in place before I sewed it down with my zipper foot. And the only caveat here is that you just have to be really careful when you're sewing the channel that you don't hit or snag that cord, because then of course it won't slide within the channel when you try to use it as a drawstring. And in the center front we need to make 2 eyelet holes for that cord to exit out of. So I made my eyelets on the inside of that casing so that the drawstring will exit kind of like closer to my body, and then after I tie it, it's easy to tuck it away on the inside of the chemise. And I'm sorry for the video quality here. I did not realize that my camera was having such trouble with the autofocus. It really is just wanting to focus on my arm and my hand here and not on the actual sewing that I'm doing. Oh, and actually, I guess I didn't even use my zipper foot when I sewed this down. I just used my regular foot and was really careful to keep that line of stitching right on the edge of the casing and not catch any of the cord. With the raised empire waistline from the Regency period, petticoats needed some sort of solution to keep them up under the bust, because otherwise they would fall down and sort of settle at the natural waist. So petticoats of this time period either were bodiced, so they had basically an entire top bodice part that was usually structured and may have taken the place of the stays, or they had kind of like suspender-like straps. So the second version with the suspender straps is the version that I'm going with. And to do this, I basically just took that same pattern that I just used for my shift and modified it a little bit. So kind of chopped it off on the top end to sit under the breast, and then made it a little bit wider at the bottom because I didn't want it to kind of like cling to the shift layer underneath. Then I made a couple of straps by cutting long strips on the grain of the fabric and folding them inwards the same way that you do as if you're making bias binding. And then I top stitched down that open edge of the strap to close it. But before I could attach those straps, I needed to add a waistband. And here I cut out a waistband that was going to be the exact measurement of my under bust, and I attached that to the top edge of the petticoat and pleated the petticoat down in the back only. So wanting the front of the petticoat to lay nice and flat and any remaining fabric to be pleated into the back. Once the waistband was attached, I could try the petticoat on and pin my straps in place. So I pinned them in the back first, then put the petticoat on and decided how short I wanted them to be and where they needed to sit on the front before pinning them in place. So I want to show you current state of the petticoat here. This is the back of the petticoat, and let's see. First, so I made a mistake and I did not leave an opening for me to get into the petticoat, and because, you know, my boobs are fairly small, I can usually get stuff on over my head. And I could with this, but I decided it would be way easier if I, had an actual slit in the petticoat. But because I hadn't left myself, I hadn't planned it that way, I basically had to cut the slit and then, fold it back to finish the edges. And so then I'm left with this gap. It's fine because, this is an underlayer and the chemise will, cover my body in that area. So not ideal, but fine. And you can see that I just did a whip stitch along this edge to finish it off, which is an 18th century technique. I don't know if it would have been used in the Regency period, but that's what I chose to do. So then up at the top we have the waistband, and I currently have drawstrings in it, but because the waistband is actually like measured to my exact measurements, I don't think that I'm gonna keep it. I think what I'm gonna do is actually take like broader tape and insert it, maybe attach it on the inside like about here. That way if I ever lose weight, I could, cinch it up a little bit, but I think that's gonna work much better and be much easier to tie than these little drawstrings. And then one thing that I do need to fix is I somehow, like, this distance here is much smaller than this distance from the edge to the strap. I don't know how I got that wrong, but this one I need to unattach and move in. And then these straps right now are only attached at the bottom, so I need to just do a row of stitches here to attach it at the top as well, the same way that I have done in the front. And then we'll see, I might have to take the hem up a little bit too, but that is TBD. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on how to make a Regency chemise and petticoat. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more historical sewing videos. See you next time.